The rain hadn't stopped since the burial. My twins clung to me, small fists tightening around my coat sleeves, their sobs lost in the storm. I carried their grief with mine until we reached home, or what used to be home. The locks had changed. My mother-in-law's voice hissed through the crack of the door. "Clear out! Tiffany needs a showroom, not a nursery." My father-in-law's tone followed, cold and dismissive. "Not our problem." The door shut. The bolt slid into place like a final insult. My children stood in the rain, crying for warmth, for safety. I stared at the door, at the house my wife and I built, at the life ripped away before her body was even cold. And in that moment, I knew grief wasn't my enemy. They were. At first, I told myself it was grief making me hear cruelty where there was only callousness, that funerals twist people, that property and money pull masks off faces. But denial is fragile. Her clothes were still inside, her photographs, her perfume lingered in the rooms I couldn't enter. They weren't grieving, they were erasing. I lay awake in a rented room that night, my children finally asleep beside me. I replayed her voice in my head, her promises that her parents would always protect the twins, that family was unshakable. Instead, I saw her mother's sneer, her father's indifference. I wanted to rage, to break something. But rage is useless. Rage burns quick and leaves only ash. What I needed was precision. What I needed was proof. I started with documents, titles, deeds, bank accounts, quiet requests for copies, questions asked in silence. The house was in her name, transferred just weeks before the diagnosis. Not to me, not to us, to them. The company shares I believed were for our children had been redirected, signed over under pressure while she was weak, medicated, dying. Every discovery tightened the knot in my chest, but I showed nothing. I smiled at work. I read bedtime stories. I signed school papers. My children saw a father holding steady. They never saw the storm boiling beneath. Her parents believed they'd buried not just my wife, but my will. They mistook quiet for weakness. They never understood silence is the sharpest blade. The lawyer's file landed heavy on my desk. Dates, signatures, medical records showing my wife sedated when she agreed to give them everything. It wasn't inheritance, it wasn't grief, it was theft. I called them. Calm, polite, invited them to dinner. Neutral ground. They came, smug, certain I'd finally accepted defeat. When dessert ended, I slid the folder across the table. Their faces drained as each page turned. Coercion, I said softly. Fraud. Elder abuse. Choose the word you like. My mother-in-law's mouth trembled. "You wouldn't?" I cut her off. "You already did." The silence after was heavier than any shouting. I didn't threaten, I didn't raise my voice. I simply outlined what would happen next. The lawsuit, the publicity, the court orders, the exposure of their greed. Then I placed one more paper on the table, a guardianship petition for the twins. Filed, approved, irrevocable. "You'll never touch them again," I said. "Not their lives, not their future, not even their names." Her father's jaw clenched, fury boiling behind his eyes. Her mother began to cry, but I felt nothing. They had taken my wife. They had tried to take everything else. All I did was return the silence. Weeks later, the house was legally mine again, empty, stripped of their presence. I walked through the rooms, children's laughter echoing faintly as they played upstairs. My wife's picture hung on the wall, her eyes steady, watching. I didn't speak to her, didn't pray, didn't promise. I simply understood. Betrayal doesn't announce itself with fury. It comes quiet, smiling, dressed as family. But so does vindication. I locked the door behind me that night, the key cool in my palm. And as the rain finally stopped, I realized the truth. They buried her, but I buried them.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Subscribe now to Cheating Stories Insight World for more amazing stories.